I told you just last week, and I didn't think it would be in this way, but I told you that this show is going to start to challenge you in every way. Tonight, I challenge not only you, but I challenge Barack Obama and Sarah Palin and the people on the left and the right, the people in politics, Brian Williams. Let's see who will stand together. As people did on September, what was it, 12th? Maybe even the 11th. I think it was the 12th, when everybody, left and right, all got together. And they stood on the Capitol steps. Was that show, or do we really believe that we should stand together against violence? I'm going to lead, and we're going to show you who will stand with us, if anyone will. You can read my challenge online at glennbeck.com. This show is packed today, and I want to tell you about the three kinds of threats. And I'm going to have to continue live online immediately after this broadcast. As soon as the show is over, go to foxnews.com/GlennBeck for more information. Here's the thing. America is grappling to understand the Arizona tragedy. And the absolute vacuum of leadership on both sides is staggering. We live in a country that has been struck by John Hinckley Jr., by Sirhan, Lee Harvey Oswald, Mark David Chapman. We know crazy killers. We've also been hit by terrorists like Timothy McVeigh, the D.C. sniper John Allen Mohammed, the Fort Hood killer Nidal Hassan, and 19 hijackers, all claiming to be freedom fighters. So you'd think that we would understand terrorism, and maybe we'd understand the difference between madmen and terrorists. But we don't even understand terrorism because we don't even talk about it. And madmen? Is it ever really their fault? It's got to be somebody else's fault. All evidence points to the fact that this assailant from this weekend was severely mentally disturbed. His belief system wasn't even rational by any modern political standard. He was an atheist who believed George W. Bush was responsible for 9/11. He feared a global currency, cited the Communist Manifesto of one of his favorite books, and thought the Mars rover landing was staged. These are not the opinions of a coherent individual. Far too often, we have seen in our schools and in our post office, in our office buildings, acts of violence from the misfits of society. We can look for the warning signs. But the truth is, you can't stop these things from happening. You can try. Maybe you can stop a few of them. But these horrific events will always be with people in every nation. Because violence is a people problem. It's a human problem. Every American citizen can make a personal choice today, but that still won't stop it. But we can move forward on the acts of terrorism, because that's what they're calling this. It wasn't. This was an act of a madman. But let's talk about terror for a second. Do you believe that Americans from different walks of life, it doesn't matter, they can be communists, they can kill in the name of Karl Marx or George Washington, it doesn't matter. Any walk of life, do you believe that people, individuals, can convince themselves that they are freedom fighters and carry out acts of violence? I believe that. The answer is yes. Now, if you agree with that, then what do? I challenge you tonight to take a clear stand. Turning these horrific events into an opportunity for political attack is childish at best. It is a response to a very grown-up problem, as if you were four. Do I need to explain this isn't about winning a political blame game? This is about our republic. The atheists aren't to blame. Those who hate George W. Bush are not to blame. Those who don't believe in space travel are not to blame. Jared Lee Loughner is to blame. Period. End of story. This tragedy should not be used as an opportunity to try to bend reality, to retroactively place a madman on the other side of the aisle. It should be a time to come together and pray for the victims and their families. A time we can all come together and state that violence is off limits for all sides in a republic. And violence should never be politicized. You're not a freedom fighter. You're a murderer. You're a terrorist. Isn't it time for us to state with unified passion that we will not accept anyone who threatens or actually carries out violence, denouncing violence from all sides, standing here. I invite you, Mr. President, stand with me. I invite you, Van Jones, stand with me. Violence from all sides is reprehensible. And by rejecting violence, it doesn't make your movement any less just. In fact, it does the opposite. To quote Martin Luther King, "But there is something that I must say to my people who stand in the warm threshold which leads us to the palace of justice. In the process of gaining our rightful place, we must not be guilty of wrongful deeds. Let us not seek to satisfy our thirst for freedom by drinking from the cup of bitterness and hatred. We must forgive the conduct of our struggle, or we must forever conduct our struggle on the high plane of dignity and discipline. We must not allow our creative protest to degenerate into physical violence. Again and again, we must rise to the majestic heights of meeting physical force with soul force." I'm issuing my direct challenge when we return. Tonight, I issue a challenge, and I issue this challenge to all Americans, left, right, regardless if you're a politician, a pundit, a painter, a priest, a parishioner, a poet, or a porn star. I issue this challenge. Sign your name to this. Available at glennbeck.com. Read it tonight. I denounce violence, regardless of ideological motivation. I denounce anyone from the left, the right, or the middle who believes physical violence is the answer to whatever it is they feel is wrong with our country. I denounce those who wish to tear down our system and rebuild it in their own image, whatever image that might be. I denounce those from the left, the right, or the middle who call for riots and violence as an opportunity to bring down and reconstruct our system. I denounce violent threats and calls for destruction of our system, regardless of their underlying ideology, whether they come from the, how do you say it again, the Hutari militia, or Francis Fox Piven. I hold those responsible for violence responsible for the violence. And I denounce those who attempt to blame political opponents for the act of madmen or terrorist. I denounce those from the left, the right, or the middle that sees violence as a viable alternative to a long-established system of change made within the constraints of our constitutional republic. I will stand tonight with anyone who will sign that pledge. I wonder who will sign this pledge. I'll bet you the only one here will be Sarah Palin. I'm going to urge leaders from both sides of the aisle. Barack Obama, how much more responsible can anyone be? Join me. Let's get the word out. All walks of life. We can be political enemies. But can't we join on the things that we learned on September 11th and join hands like we did on September 12th? We can duke it out, but be against violence. I believe we must change ourselves to hold on to our republic. Final thought on this next.